Hello, Story County, Iowa. Very nice to be here. This is Admiral Mike Franken, Iowa's Admiral. Look forward to having a nice conversation with you.
What's your plan to fix healthcare in the United States?
I am a big fan of the Affordable Care Act. I'm a fan of improving the Affordable Care Act iteratively. We know it needs some work. I'm a fan of putting Medicare on the exchange and lowering the age restrictions for Medicare to enhance the program overall.
Do you support repealing the Hyde Amendment?
I am a supporter of removing the Hyde Amendment. I am also a supporter of women's health and women's choice.
How would you address the increasing cost of prescription drugs?
Certainly the cost of prescription drugs have in the United States in particular, are ridiculously high. The government needs to discuss price controls directly with the pharmaceutical companies. There should be a cap, that makes us, as a large consumer of drugs, perhaps below where the cost of drugs are sold internationally. I don't buy the fact that drug companies lose an R&D because we curtail their outrageous profits in the United States. That's nonsensical. And no other business does that, and I would push against that every step of the way.
How would you improve rural access to healthcare?
So, from rural Iowa, first of all, if we fully enacted the Affordable Care Act, I believe we'd have a business plan that would warrant additional clinics to be opened up in small towns that today, with the lack of continuity of people with coverage, cause a business plan to fall apart. But firstly, we would expand on telemedicine. We would do block grants to encourage businesses to move to rural America. And also, even from an infrastructure perspective, accentuate the infrastructure improvements in rural America to bring about more businesses, more people, a more dynamic economy, and medical improvements will come in stride.
Would you push to bring us back to the Paris Agreement?
So, yes, stepping away from the Paris Accord was absolutely the wrong thing to do. As a broad-minded, broad-shouldered, altruistic nation, which is my nation, your nation, we should be the leader worldwide in setting the standards, pulling other nations together, being the standard bearer of progressive environmental solutions to the future for our children, for the world's future progeny, and for this globe.
Do you favor a carbon tax dividend?
Yes, I do. You need to compel change. A carbon tax dividend is necessary to push society forward in valuing the carbon sequestration practices which will be necessary to curtail the climate crisis as we steam forward on that regard. And ultimately, Iowa will be a net beneficiary of enacting a carbon tax and also a corresponding carbon sequestration payback.
Would you subsidize small farming operations devoted to organic and sustainable agriculture?
What I would do is get schools, federal agencies, rural healthcare facilities, retirement homes, and develop measures that encourage the purchase of local produce, local products, and develop a market, and develop a processing, and develop an entire sequence, and keep the government out of it from getting involved in the intricacies of it, because I think we have a tendency to not do that well. But if we can get the schools, for example, to purchase the good farm-to-table products, the rest will generally follow itself.
What are your views on gun safety, gun control, and do you believe in a ban on assault weapons?
So, been involved in the gun question since the mid-90s. Been a gun owner since I was a child in Northwest Iowa. We are a unique nation, having lived worldwide spent many years in combat theaters, being in charge of forces, large groups of forces, 4,000 in a combat environment, having just a mere one fence away from myself, my soldiers, and the potential enemy. I take this very seriously. That situation is not America. We shouldn't be armed up like we're in a combat environment. That's an entirely nonsensical picture of what America is. Certainly isn't my America. The gun industry would like to keep saying, I'm protecting my family, et cetera, et cetera. That's all nonsense, generally nonsense, disproven in any number of studies. I would ban the large magazines of assault weapons.
How can we implement sensible gun laws without making gun owners fearful that we are trying to take their guns?
1996, walking down the Russell Senate office building passageway, 4, 5, 6 fellas in suits, swaggering back and forth. And I said to 2 other fellas I was with, who are those guys? And they said, that's the NRA. They're making their monthly rounds, delivering checks, ensuring that people support the following measures. And I said, really? And the one guy said, yeah, don't worry, they won't go into Kennedy's office. And McCain's guy who was with me said, yeah, they won't come in our office either. It's total nonsense. Let's enact responsible gun laws.
Who is most susceptible to gun violence in our communities?
First of all, who's most susceptible to gun violence? The gun owner. Suicides. Secondly, the person who is that person's partner in life. Oftentimes a female. That's the second person most threatened by a gun owner. Third, family member, close member of the family, or the offspring, child in many cases. More accidents happen than that where people get shot than that shooting at an armed person.
Address campaign finance reform, and do you support public funding of elections?
As a candidate, having never done this before, we do need some form of change in the way we fund these campaigns. The external money, the sight unseen, the entities which pile in money for untoward, I think, rationale is not in accordance with what we're trying to elect Iowa values and bringing the best candidate up in many respects. I'm a big fan of either public financing of these campaigns, having a shorter campaign cycle, or if we can't do that, then let's go ahead and put term limits on our elected officials.
Please talk about the president's response to the coronavirus crisis.
In a time of trouble, we need leadership. It's been the case since the beginning of humankind. Someone needs to be in charge, intelligent, forward-looking, empathetic vision. We lack that. We know we lack that. We need to do better. And we need to also have a Senate made up of individuals who hold the president responsible and call him out when his leadership is inappropriate for what's the future of America needs.
How would you approach the national debt?
We did what you never want to do, going back to biblical stories to today. We lived large in a time of effervescence, and now we're going to suffer. Or more importantly, our kids are going to suffer, trying to pay back what's going to be a $27 trillion debt by the end of the year. We need to look at revenue proceeds. We need to look at where our expenditures are. We need to knock off the laws and the regulations which cause an expansion of those of haves and have-nots. We have a ridiculous number of overly wealthy people in the United States. I'm all about earning a good living. I've done that myself. But when a chief executive officer makes 350 times what the mean of the worker in the organization does, that's shameful. And we need to fix it. And we need to fix it from the government on up with proper taxation. And as a finance person, as a budgeteer, I'm your guy to fix the budget.
Tell us something you've learned or a new friend you've met on the trail.
I've met any number of people. I've met some of the most intelligent people I've ever discussed world affairs with on a gravel road in a farmhouse. I've met the most forward-looking individual in farming processes in an urban area. I have met the people who are most concerned about social justice in a retirement home, or in a retirement home for nuns, matter of fact. I've met a great expanse of people in this, and I'm so happy that Iowa is my home because we have such a wealth of people here to draw from. And every day is a learning opportunity, from my staff to those who I don't, not so much anymore, but have an opportunity to converse with electronically. I'm richer for it, and ultimately I'm very hopeful for the future of our nation. This is Mike Franken, frankenforiowa.org. Stay safe. I hope to see you all in person very, very soon. Thanks much.